Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński, and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has made his way to the United States with a crucial mission to present the so-called Ukraine Victory Plan to the current and future US establishment, with both President Joe Biden, former President Donald Trump, and current Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris being on the list of those who will learn about what Ukraine needs in order to win the war. But there are very few details as to the contents of the plan itself, and of course we also don't know what impact will it have. So in order to discuss this and more, we have invited Andreas Umland, analyst at the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, thanks for having me again.
So first question first, what do we know about this plan? Details have been sketchy and there has been quite a lot of speculation so far.
The details that we know so far, or the leaks, largely confirm basically the previous position, namely that negotiations are possible, but they have to be conducted from the Ukrainian side from a position of strength. Otherwise, they will not make sense. These will be negotiations like those with Moldova in 1994, or with Georgia in 2008, or with Ukraine in 2014, 2015, which led to the Minsk agreements, so-called, that then came to an end. I think what Zelenskyy is going to lay out in Washington is that basically Ukraine needs to achieve three things. It needs to reverse the fate on the front line inside Ukraine. It needs to have enough weaponry to protect its cities. And it also needs enough weaponry to keep the currently occupied Russian territory occupied by Ukraine, so that in negotiations, then Ukraine can exchange the currently occupied territories for Ukrainian territories that Russia has occupied.
So now the crucial question, who is more likely to be receptive of Ukraine's proposals? We do have on the one hand the current Democrat administration, President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris. We know their track record when it comes to helping Ukraine. We know that there were advantages and disadvantages. On the other hand, we have former President Donald Trump, who has been, well, fairly ambiguous on supporting Ukraine. So let us speculate for a moment. Who is more likely to look at this plan and say, yeah, with some changes, but we're actually ready to implement that?
Well, clearly from the rhetoric and also from the actions, the Democrats are more receptive to the Ukrainian message. Let's just remember this strange episode when Trump was president. It was withholding military aid for Ukraine in order to receive material for his electoral campaign or for his political campaign against the Biden family. So I think there is a clear affinity here between the leading Democrats and Zelenskyy. On the other hand, there is in the Republican Party, of course, also a large section that is as supportive or even more supportive of Ukraine than the Democratic Party. But Trump himself, I think, is clearly a problem. He has made many statements with regard to Putin, authoritarian leaders that are worrisome.
So let's first take a look at the Democrats. Of course, they have been supporting Ukraine, but critics, including in Ukraine itself, say they have not been doing enough. The weapons have been withheld, they were too slow to arrive, and the restrictions are still in place. Do you think this might change under Kamala Harris's leadership if she wins the elections? Or perhaps would President Biden be willing to make a last-minute change before ending his tenure?
I cannot know, but I truly hope that this visit by Zelenskyy will now lead to a change in the approach of the US administration, that both the amount of weaponry, the quality of weaponry, and also to the permissions to use weaponry will be extended. And from the speeches that Harris made at, for instance, the Munich Security Conference or the Peace Summit in Switzerland, it sounds to me as if she will be as supportive as Biden, perhaps even more supportive than Biden as president if she becomes president. So I'm hopeful here, but it's difficult to know what is happening behind the scenes.
So now, looking at the leaks concerning this plan, one of the leaks by Bloomberg indicates that the plan will include a clear pathway towards an official invitation to NATO. Now, the problem with this could be that in a recent interview, the vice presidential candidate on the Republican side, J.D. Vance, said that he believes Trump's plan for achieving a quick peace in Ukraine will include essentially telling Ukraine, you're not going to be invited to NATO. You have to remain neutral. Well, certainly there might be a problem here, right?
Yes, if that is true, then this is clearly a problem for Ukraine. Ukraine wants this NATO membership. It has for a long time, until 2014, not been pursuing this seriously. There was until already in 2003, in fact, under President Kuchma and then Prime Minister Yanukovych, already a law that said that Ukraine would become NATO membership. But until 2014, this was not a serious aim. Since 2019, NATO membership is written in the Ukrainian constitution, so little will change here in the Ukrainian position. And if the US will pressure Ukraine to reject this aim, I don't think that will be actually successful, because there's just too much. There has been too much negative experience with not being a member of NATO over the last three decades, and this will remain a priority.
So in such case, what can be achieved during a potential meeting, because this has not been confirmed yet, not 100% anyway, the meeting with Donald Trump? President Zelenskyy, what kind of arguments could he use, given that the Republicans used to be, again, fairly ambiguous as to what Trump wants to do? Some of them, the more traditional Republicans, they would often say, look, the Trump plan could actually include more aid to Ukraine. If Russia continues to do what it does, Trump may say, we're going to give Ukraine more weapons and it will win the war. But then you have J.D. Vance coming out and saying, actually, it's about creating a DMZ between the countries on the line of contact, meaning Russia keeps what it has taken from Ukraine legally under international law. Also, no NATO membership for Ukraine. So what kind of common ground could be found there? So do you think that we should really take Vance's words for what they are? Or is Vance floating an idea that Trump will later say, well, this was one of the ideas, but it's not what I want to do? Because it has created some confusion there.
Yes, I'm afraid one has to take these announcements by Vance and by Trump and by others seriously, that they want to basically freeze the situation. And I think the strongest argument here should be from the Ukrainian side, that this war is actually not only and not so much about Ukraine, it's about the international order. And it's not actually about the liberal international order, it's about the basic international order, and such things as inviolability of borders or national sovereignty and territorial integrity. And if this cannot be secured for Ukraine, which has given away its nuclear weapons in the early 1990s against the promise from the five official nuclear weapon states and the permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations. If Ukraine cannot achieve that, if Russia, a permanent member of the Security Council and a nuclear weapon state, official nuclear weapon state, can enlarge its territory at the expense of another UN member state and a non-nuclear weapon state, then this is basically the end of the international order, because then other countries will draw their lessons from this, and not only the stronger countries will try to repeat what Russia has done. Above all, I would say the weaker countries will reassess their reliance on international law, on international organization, and international solidarity. And I think that is the strongest argument that can be made, and it should be made more forcefully this is not only about empathy or European values or human rights or democracy or something like that. These are, of course, also important things, but it's most of all about international order and the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons.
Of course, we should also remember that Trump, when asked during the Philadelphia debate if he wants Ukraine to win, and he was asked this question twice, he refused to answer. He simply said that he wants the war to come to an end, which anyone would have said that. Nobody would have said, I want more war, I want more casualties, I want more destruction. But he didn't commit to ensuring the Ukrainian victory. So now the crucial question, in the current international climate, given that the alliances stand where they stand, do you think Ukraine has a chance of avoiding a Minsk III kind of situation and really ensure that it gets what it belongs to it, its rightful lands under international law back, instead of having some sort of temporary arrangement which would result in Russia essentially taking away what it has taken from Ukraine?
Yes, it has a chance, and I think the one of the arguments that it should make and that should be acknowledged in the West are that the first Minsk agreements did not lead to peace, that the Russian-Moldovan agreement of '94 about the withdrawal of Russian troops did not lead to the withdrawal of Russian troops. The Georgia agreement of 2008 about the withdrawal of Russian troops did with Russian troops, and that we had already these agreements, and we can have another one. It will not be a road to peace. It will be just actually a road to more escalation. Then the aggressor will be encouraged to repeat what Russia has done in the 90s to Moldova, in the early 2000s to Georgia, and more recently to Ukraine. So if that is communicated, and if that finally sinks in the Western elites and public, I think there should be no problem with getting enough military and financial support to enter negotiations then from an advantageous position.
After all, Russia negotiating in good faith is something of a contradiction in terms, and this has been proved time and time again in history. Andreas Umland was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight. And I'm Joanna Czerwiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.